was your breaking point, where you snapped and went off on a rude customer? Story 1. One of my coworkers was feeling under the weather about midway through her shift, so I was asked to move my till over to the register she was on so that she could go home. No biggie. I grab my till, walk over, and quietly tell coworker, "Hey, I'm here to relieve you so you can go home. Hope you feel better." She finishes up her transaction, pulls her till out, starts gathering her stuff up. Next customer in line starts complaining about how long she's going to have to wait. I put my till into the register. "It'll just be a moment, ma'am. Sign on." "Just give me a minute and I'll be with you," and start scanning her stuff. Customer complains about coworker not ringing her up. "She should have rung me up. I've been waiting for 10 minutes. A lie, since it had been slow, with multiple registers open, and coworker had taken maybe 2 minutes with her previous customer. Still scanning. "I'm very sorry about that, ma'am, but coworker was not feeling well and I was asked to relieve her so she could go home." Customer was not satisfied. "Well, why didn't she stay home if she was sick?" I don't even look up at that point because I'm just seething. Still scanning her stuff, I respond, "Maybe she was feeling well at the start of her shift and only started feeling bad after she got here. Or maybe she tried to come in and work through feeling sick because maybe, just maybe, she relies on the money she makes here to have a roof over her head and food in her stomach and can't afford to take a sick day." I finish ringing her up. "Your total is XX." Not another word out of her. She grabbed her stuff and got out. Story 2. I worked retail when I was in college. A customer came to my till and one of the products he had was a large version of a chocolate bar. I scanned it and he started giving me because the price was wrong. I knew the price wasn't wrong because I enjoy this particular chocolate and bought it all the time. He walked me down to the shelf where it was and pointed out the price tag. I told him that's the wrong price tag. It was for regular size, not large. He asked me, "Are you fucking blind?" I responded with, "Yes, actually. I'm blind in one eye, but I can still see that this price tag is for a regular size bar and not large. Look at the small letters under the price." He immediately turned nice and bought me a chocolate bar. But screw retail. Never doing that again. Story 3. I used to be a shift supervisor at a pet store. I once had one of the girls come up to the front, crying. Immediately, my big sister instincts kicked in and I asked her what's wrong. Turns out there is some back in the dog food section that she was trying to help, and he was a total to her, arguing with her about something that she was entirely correct about. So I head back there. Dickhead is back there throwing around bags of dog food. So I ask if he needs help and he goes off on me about the girl that was just back there and how useless she was. So I listen to him rant and then correct him and tell him he was out of line. He gives me the favorite, "Haven't you heard the phrase 'the customer is always right'" line? So I give him a flat look and respond with, "Yeah, and in this case, he's also a horse's." He loses it and yells, saying he wants to speak to the manager. I give a shrug and say, "I am the manager. If you want, you can fill out a customer complaint card on your way out and I will make sure I get it. But you need to leave now. I've managed at so many different retail stores. I'm not even fazed by people anymore. I'm so glad to be out of the industry." Edit. Apparently, I used the wrong homophone. Story 4. Had a woman come into my red-themed department store asking about cameras. We aren't trained in every individual camera, so we usually just refer to the item cards on display near the device that lists the basic specs and features. She wanted to know why one, which seemingly had better specs, was priced lower than another. Best we could give her was, IDK, that's just the way it is." The entire time she's berating my teammate who I had been called to assist and starts ripping into me, telling me she should have just gone to PC Richardson's instead of my store. After finally deciding on one, I ring her out, where she continues to about the service and knowledge level. I asked if she wanted a replacement plan, which is standard practice on all electronics purchases. She was like, "Are you kidding me? I've never had a worse experience and there's no way I'm giving you any more money." I smiled and told her, "Well, next time, ma'am, there's always PC Richardson's." She was pissed. "What did you just say to me?" I repeated myself. "Well, I should just go return this right now." "Sure thing, guest services at the From can definitely help you with that. Just make sure you have your receipt handy." Story 5. I worked at a party city in Minnesota. There was one night where I was working the register. It was near the end of the night, tired, still had homework and was in a bad mood. However, I was still polite and friendly. This lady comes in, grabs a few items and comes to the register. She doesn't say anything even when I try to make small talk. She seemed like a snooty woman. She just stared at her phone, pays, and leaves. A few minutes later, she comes in looking for her phone, clearly frustrated, and I tell her I hasn't seen it and that I was sure she had walked out with it. She walks out and comes back and says, "See, can't find it." She then proceeds to accuse me of stealing it. I had my phone in my pocket and I showed it to her, told her I had no need for her phone, but I will check out for it. She demands I turn out my pockets, and she wanted to check behind the register to make sure I hadn't hidden it. The night manager is there at this point and just tells me to do what she says. It gets to the point where they also go through my locker in the back of the store. Mind you, I only had a few minutes before she comes in accusing me. And then going through my car. How the did I manage then when I have to walk right next to her to get to it? After proving I isn't have it, he gets angrier and says, I must have stolen it because I'm a pathetic loser working retail that can't afford a real phone. Normally I'm a shy, introverted guy that doesn't say much and is polite. But I just tilted into oblivion. Told her she was a stuck-up, entitled that needed a fucking attitude adjustment. That I had no need for a phone that was better because mine works just fine. And that her phone wouldn't be fit to wipe my with. Lame, but I was so angry I couldn't really think. I still had the job the next day. D-edit. I apologize for the awful spelling, Chashas grammar. Reread it today and was appalled. Story 6. I used to work at a Starbucks in an area where NFL owners, professional athletes, and the like lived. One of our regulars was some guy who had spent his life wallowing in orange spray tan and had the whitest hair one could imagine. Every day he would come in and order a green tea, literally a tea bag with hot water. No matter what, there was always something wrong with it. Too hot, too cold, cup was weird, whatever. Anyway, one day during my last 2 weeks, this guy comes in when we're being slammed. He orders, and I call out, green tea latte for X. Notice I did not say green tea. He comes up and snaps, excuse me, it was a green tea. It's literally water and a tea bag. How stupid can you be? I turn toward him, look him dead in the eye, and loudly go, that's not even your fucking order. Every time you come in here, it's something else. If we're so stupid, then go to another location. He stepped back and didn't say anything after that. Story 7. I offered a very minor celebrity in the UK who was in town to do a pantomime, a store card, that we have to offer everyone. And his response was, I don't need 5 CO off. I could pay your wages for 10 years from one job. Don't you know who I am? So I decided to lie. Not a clue. I then called my boss, who I knew didn't watch any soaps, on the tannoy and asked him if he knew said celeb. He said, sorry, no. Should I? Then I asked the customer behind him who said no. She was just getting involved or she genuinely didn't know, I have no idea. But that lady was a legend. Then he said, Sam Kane, Brookside, Coronation Street. I finished with, nope, still don't know you. So you sure you don't want to take advantage of the 5 CO discount? It means you save $3.55. He walked out. My manager complimented me on my store card pitch. It was a good afternoon. Story 8. I worked at a big-name office supply store for 2 years and dealt with all kinds of bullshit. I don't take well to customers treating low-wage people like. A few summers ago, I had come home after working at that office supply store and decided I wanted ice cream. Low wage or not, I had worked a few extra hours and decided to invite the single mom neighbor and her kids to come for ice cream, since I knew she was struggling too. It was the beginning of summer and there was a line 20 people long, but no deal, you wait your turn. There was a woman a few people ahead of me who spotted one of the employees on their break, leaning out an extra window and talking to a friend who had dropped by. This woman decided to lean out of the line and scream up to the windows, we're out here waiting and she's just chatting with her friends instead of doing her job, etc., etc. I lost my temper, leaned out and said, ma'am, please, what's the problem here? You're waiting for ice cream, not the cure for cancer. Anyone who works hard is entitled to a break, and especially when low-wage employees deal with assholes like you, they need it. The entire line started chuckling and looking at her. She turned beet red and went silent. I hope she felt more embarrassed than she ever had because, seriously, it's fucking ice cream. Don't be a... Story 9. I work at a concert venue where I normally check bags and do security until Warped Tour came around. The food vendors were understaffed, so I was moved to a stand where we never had enough food, and I was the only one doing food prep, which I hadn't learned how to properly do. About 2 hours into cutting deals with people who ordered something, I ran out of saying, "Oh, chicken sandwich? Sorry, just ran out. I feel really bad, but I have burgers. Can that work? I'll throw in some fries." Someone starts giving me. My line is backed up like 15 customers as it had been for an hour now, and this person somehow thinks that I can do anything about my current situation besides leave. I didn't even need to say anything. I looked in the eyes, shut my own for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and exhausted hunched over the bar. When I look up at my line of now 20 people, I make eye contact with the guy behind her in line. He turns the girl around and says, "We're here to see a concert, get drunk, and have fun while this kid is stuck slaving away, making food for people all day. How about you leave the fucking kid alone? I'll refund you right now. What did you get?" For every one horrible person I deal with, there are at least 5 who keep a smile and make me happy to work there. Then there's that guy who brings a tear to my eye by looking out for me. Story 10. Not technically me, but it's my story. I managed, in person, customer service for a place in a location with a lot of shitty rich people. One day, this middle-aged man with a Mercedes and a big gold Ivy League ring on his hand was yelling at me about something. I don't even remember what. I'm a 5'2" female. I was maybe 20 at the time, and this grown man is leaned over my desk waving his arms and yelling in my face. A few minutes into his rant, he backhands a brochure rack over my side of the counter and it smashes on the floor. All of a sudden, we hear a loud bang, then a door slam. The customer freezes and my 6'4" assistant manager appears, as if out of nowhere. He gets face to face. Well, as close as he can given that he has 6 to 8 inches on the angry customer. With him, and just goes in his deepest, angriest voice with his booming Bajan accent, "Do you have a fucking problem?" Before he can finish the sentence, the man is out the door, into his Mercedes and down the street. I never had a problem with him again. The assistant manager was in the back room eating lunch, watching this unfold through one of those windows that looks like a mirror from the outside. He usually let me handle because I was the manager. But as soon as the brochure rack was in the air, it was a different story. Story 11. My mother owned a dry cleaners and one of her customers flipped out on her because she said we misplaced her clothing. She tried talking to her calmly and explained to her that whatever she dropped off was picked up and paid for. I believe it was one blouse, so we didn't lose it. She then went off on her, and I basically told the lady to off and get the out. I never curse in front of my parents, but that lady pissed me off yelling at my mom who worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. She then told me to watch myself because she knew people who would get my chink. Story 12. Gonna get buried, but I've got 2 owned managed a Little Caesars pizza joint for a bit. One night, some guy comes in and tells my counter girl we screwed up his food last time, so this time it's free. My cashier perfectly explains the return. We made a mistake policy and asks the guy's name since we have a book we write them in. The guy starts loosing it and yelling at my 16, 17-year-old employee. I calmly walk over to her, ask her to go in the back and call this guy out for swearing at a young girl, how he is a piece of, "You have no respect, get the out and don't ever come back." The random customer in the lobby gave me a high five. Second story. I was actually the customer at a Little Caesars. It's probably 5 to close. I roll in and ask for a hot and ready, since I'm headed to a friend's house and I don't want to show up empty-handed. Tells me it will be about a minute since it's still in the oven and they have to cut it. My first thought was sweet fresh pizza. After I pay and move to the side, a lady walks in and asks for 2 pizzas. The kid behind the counter tells her it will be about 3 minutes. At this point, the lady starts loosing her. "This is bull. It should be hot and ready. I should not have to wait." The kid behind the counter is still in high school and trying to do his best, so I step in. I slam my hand on the counter and say, "Lady, and you fucking kidding me right now?" I said, "What gives you the right to talk to someone like that? Over 3 minutes. Everywhere you go, you have to wait to at least pay. How important are you that you can't wait for 3 minutes for hot right out of the oven pizzas?" She was silent. As I looked up, the kid in the back gave me a few fist pumps. When the first 2 pizzas came out, I offered her mine so she could get back to her important life faster. She declined and said that she can wait. The next time I stopped in, it was the same 2 guys. Gave me my pizza and said, "This one is on us." After that, they would always hook my up with crazy bread. Story 13. Worked in a high-end hippie store. Lady came in with her dog, despite the mall's no dogs policy. Told her no dogs allowed, but she insisted she knew someone at corporate. It's bullshit, but whatever. I don't get paid enough to argue. Dog immediately pisses on the floor. She looked over at me with this, "Well, Looked like I was supposed to rush over and wipe it up. Nope, you lady. I just tossed a roll of paper towels at her and went back to folding. Story 14. I was asked to cut the locks off any lockers that were not recorded as paid for. I was the one asked to do it because I opened the gym, and any lockers used and not paid for were clearly in violation of the way of things. I didn't like the idea of it, but I agreed. I took too long to get to all of them, so a client came in just as I was cutting the lock off her locker. She flipped out on me, called me racist, went to my manager, told him I'm racist, and insisted on talking to the VP because she was sure she could and should get me fired. No fucking way. I have black cousins that had to grow up in a Mennonite family. I have a best friend treated as a dog because she is native and was fostered by a horrible white family. There is real racism out there, and it's terrible. She didn't just insult me, she insulted everyone who has ever truly been a victim of oppression. I am good at customer service. I put up with everything with a smile and a willingness to laugh at myself. I cater to the needs of my customers and clients, and it's important to me that I make their experience as positive as possible. But yeah, this situation threw that all out the window. I told her she's a fucking and walked away. Right in front of my manager. My manager gave me paid leave, and that was that. Well, once I got back, I also went through every customer record and matched it against all the locker records, making sure it was properly up to date. And I also told my manager that I would not be cutting locks off anymore, and he agreed. Story 15. When I worked at a CVS a couple of years ago, I had a husband and wife come in right as I opened up. They were usuals at my store, and they were a pain every time. So I braced myself for the fight I'd have to put up, just to cave to what they wanted. Anyway, as I'm the only one in the store, I make sure to inform them that the coupon they plan to use can't be on sale items. The husband takes offense to this, saying that he knows how to use a coupon and can read, and I should mind my own business. It's too early for this, but I just take it in stride and go back up to the register where my Red Bull is waiting for me. I down the Red Bull and those two are ready to check out. I'm silent as I scan his items so I'm not berated for trying to make small talk. Halfway through the transaction, I noticed all the items are on sale and inform him. He and the wife get irate, yelling how he was supposed to know that, how it's my fault for not telling him, and the coupon should work to make up for my mistake. He even goes as far to try and grab me from over the counter. I grab the baseball bat that I kept next to me for just this occasion. Touch me, and I promise you they'll be carrying you and your wife out on a stretcher. Get thee out now, before I fucking snap. They took off out of the store and never saw them again. My boss and her boss reviewed the tape after I informed her about what happened, and they believe I was justified. I was a legend at the store for what happened and was cathartic as. Story 16. Work fast food. Customer returned fries because they wanted salt-free, so I put down another batch, waited, took them up, and brought them to the customer, salt-free. 2 minutes later, they come back and flip major, saying they are still too salty. I didn't lose my me, but my manager behind the counter didn't take too kindly and kicked him out of the store. Felt good. Story 17. Working at a barbershop in New Zealand. Indian guy comes in for a haircut. He keeps leaning into the mirror and playing with his hair while I'm trying to cut it. Fidgety and generally unimpressed, even though I am halfway through the cut. I finally finish, and not only give him an amazing haircut but probably the best he's ever had, and he leans over to me, rather than talking via the mirror like a normal person, and says, "Too long, I want medium." So this asks for another haircut, but in the format of a drink size. So I redo the entire haircut, and 15 minutes later he leans in, plays with it, and says, "No good, where can I go, who will fix this?" I take the cape off of him and I say, "Go down the road to Device store and buy yourself the biggest you can find, and yourself. Seriously, just yourself, and get thee out of my shop." He ended up doing this frustrated side-to-side head bob that a lot of Indian customers do, but I still made him pay. Customers like him boil my. Story 18. I wasn't working, I was a customer. It was 28 years ago. I was at a fast food place, I think it was a Popeyes, in a mall food court, and my family were seated at a nearby table. I watched the customer in front of me throw an unreasonable tantrum at the cashier to try to get a freebie. Then, when the cashier didn't budge, she demanded the manager. All the while, I'm standing there waiting for her tantrum to be over so I can order. The manager listened to her lie about the cashier and started to offer her the desired freebie. I was sick of her bullshit and sick of waiting, so I spoke up and told the manager everything that had happened. told him the woman was a liar and the cashier had been exemplary, and that if he gave the woman anything or punished the cashier in any way, I would take my business elsewhere. Threw a tantrum at me and stomped off, without her food. Boss tried to comp me a meal, but I insisted on paying because I hadn't done anything special. I had merely gotten pissed off she was wasting my time and told the truth. Cashier gave me Wes food free, in addition to what I ordered, since it had already been made or packaged and would go to waste, and was very friendly to me every time she saw me afterward. My family wanted to know what had taken so long and why I got so much food. Story 19. I used to work in a clothing store that was very long and very narrow, basically a hallway lined with clothes. I had a woman shopping with her adult son and his wife who were in back. I was in the front of the store folding shirts and then bringing them back to put them away, which required me to frequently pass by them. I didn't think anything of what I was doing until the woman came up to pay and said to me, "I did not appreciate you following me around the store." I was shocked to hear her say this, since I thought it was pretty obvious I was putting shirts away. "I wasn't following you," I said. "Yes, you were," she said, "and I do not appreciate being treated like a thief." I don't know why I snapped on this woman. I wasn't having a particularly bad day, and I had dealt with far worse customers than her before. But there was just something about her arrogance and the wrongful accusation. Not that I would have even been in the wrong to have been keeping an eye on her in the first place. That just made me lose it. "Well, I'm sorry you're so paranoid," I said. "Paranoid?" she said. "Yes, because it should have been really obvious that I was putting shirts away and not following you, so you seem to have a problem with paranoia." She started to say something else, but then her son stopped her and said, "Just let it go," he said. "Thank you," I said to him. And then he screamed at me, "Don't think I'm taking you up. I'll take you out before I'll take you up." I was in pretty deep at this point anyway, so I saw nothing wrong with pushing it a little further. "Do I need to clock out so I can take you up on that?" I said. And that was when the shift leader came back from her break to send me on mine. I clocked out and left her to deal with them. I figured at best that I would be in deep for talking to customers that way, and at worst I'd be fired. But I really didn't care. Like I said before, for some reason, this woman and her son just pushed me over the fucking edge, and I really didn't care what the consequences were. To my shock, though, when I came back from my break, the shift leader told me she had told them that it was my job to follow customers around and check up on them, to make sure they weren't stealing anything and that I hadn't done anything wrong. I don't know what happened in the conversation they had, but I can't imagine that would have been the response if the customers had recounted the full conversation to her. I still can't believe I got away with that. Story 20. Bitch wanted a wireless surge protector and insisted that they exist. And she wasn't talking about prototypes. She was adamant that a house-wide wireless surge protector had recently entered the market. Those were the 10 longest minutes of my life as I tried to convince her that she was full of, without blatantly insulting her. I don't even remember how that ended because I was filled with such blinding rage that it's all one angry blur. Fuck. Story 21. This pompous came into my restaurant one afternoon with his wife, and one of my favorite coworkers ended up getting him as a table. Right off the bat, he started snapping his fingers at people to get their attention, cutting them off only to not say a word, having every type of passive-aggressive negative comment about the restaurant, ranging from the seats to the table to the drinks and so on. I wound up having to run his food to him, and when I got there, he was in the middle of scolding my friend on why our food was prepared a certain way. UTF? It's a Cajun restaurant owned by a dude from New Orleans. It's going to be on the weird side. So I go to set his food down once he stops talking. I hadn't even finished setting it down when he goes, "Where are the crackers?" To which I reveal my other hand, carrying as many packages as I could hold. But I smile for my friend's sake and say, "Oh, they're right here, don't worry. I made sure to bring you extra." I then set his wife's food down, and again, before I'd even finished, he goes, "Where are her sides?" Which I say, "They're right here on the tray," grabbing them from the tray and setting them down. By this point, I'm fairly irked. But genius here didn't seem to realize it, and he snaps at me and says, "Spoon?" while shaking his head like you would at a child. I had been sure to prepare this guy's food perfectly before I brought it out, so he would have no reason to send me back for anything, and I remembered his spoon. Smiling, I looked down at his plate and picked up the spoon resting in front of his stupid face and said, "Oh, well, here it is. How about that?" My coworker got a kick out of that one. Even the guy's wife was smirking a little. Story 22. I'm a pizza delivery driver. A few months ago, it was a normal day so far until I had to deliver to a really shady apartment complex in the downtown area. Not so dangerous, But there were always people in that complex trying to get free food out of us. I pull up in a parking spot 1 minute earlier than my promised delivery time and give my customer a call. He immediately cuts me off on the phone and says, "You're late. I'm calling the manager." I tried to explain to him that I was in fact early, and his pizzas were totally still hot. He insisted that I was wrong and hung up the phone. Now I'm pissed. I flew, almost literally, back to my store to try and give my manager a heads up that a BS complaint was coming, and to not give that man a thing. As I storm into my store, I hear the phone ringing, and who is it? None other than the number on my delivery ticket. I pick up, and he immediately asks to speak to a manager. I tell him that I'm a manager, and he can express his complaint directly to me. He said, "Your delivery driver was rude, late, and both of my pizzas were cold." Since he lied, I proceeded to let him know that he was speaking to said delivery driver, and that if he wants to lie to me, then I will personally make it my mission to make sure he never gets anything from our establishment ever again. He didn't know what to say, and ended up passing the phone to his girlfriend or whatever. Fuck that guy, and may he forever be deprived of pizza. Story 23. A telemarketer called me at IT and insisted to talk to my client services manager to send us an information packet on flash storage. I told him we are not interested. He then said, "Sir, seeing as you are not the client services manager, you are not authorized to make decisions." Yeah, I went off on him a bit. Story 24. I used to be a Chinese food cook. One night the kitchen was closed. I cleaned everything in the kitchen, and everything we had in the food warmer was what was going to last the rest of the night. The store closed in 30 minutes. This lady came up to the counter and ordered kung pao chicken, which was the last thing I made before closing down the kitchen. This woman started bitching about how she didn't want the in the warmer because she was convinced it was just sitting there all day. I told her that unfortunately the kitchen was closed, and what was in the warmer was all we had, but it was the last thing made before closing the kitchen, which was about 15 minutes prior. She then started to curse me out and was telling me how I was going to get fired because I was being so rude, and how she is the customer, which means I have to do what she says. So I looked at her, said fine, turned around, walked into the kitchen and cooked her a new batch of kung pao chicken, and I took the entire container of dried peppers and dumped it in the wok with the chicken. It was so strong I couldn't breathe when cooking it. I dumped it into the quart box, and half the box was dried pepper flakes. Walked out, gave it to her, rang her up, told her to have a good night. I hope she went home and was furious about it. Story 25. This is my manager's story, but I'll tell it because I'm in it. Worked for a few years at a cafe in Brooklyn, my first ever job in high school and into college. All in all, I was there for about 3 years. With this time, I became an expert barista, waitress. I knew the regulars and their orders well enough to have them ready by the time they walked in the door, trained all the new employees, was the manager our owner's right hand in all things cafe related. This particular event happened on a Saturday night. Because we were well known in the area and always pretty busy, we often stayed open until 1 or 2 on Friday and Saturday nights. A group of 7 came in at about midnight, and I always jump at the chance to serve big tables because it can potentially mean big tips. But let me tell you, this was the worst fucking group I had ever served. They changed tables twice for literally no reason. The gentleman demanded we give him his drink in one of the specialty cups on the wall, something I've never done for anyone because those cups are on display to be purchased. So on and so forth. When taking their orders, the special cup gentleman's wife insisted she didn't want anything. I said, "Are you sure? Can I get you a water?" But no, she doesn't want anything. I take the rest of the orders, make the drinks, then come back 7 to 8 minutes later and serve them. As soon as I finish setting the drinks down and walk back behind the counter, Mr. Special Cup follows me there, even though customers aren't allowed there, and throws a fucking tantrum because I didn't bring his wife a drink, full-blown screaming at me in this tiny cafe about how incompetent I am. This is the worst service he's ever received in his life. He's been coming here for years, but he'll never come back here again, and I should know that I am personally to blame. My manager, upon hearing this guy berating me, comes over to see what's up. SC just continues to rip into me. My manager should be ashamed to have ever hired me. I should be fired immediately. He's going to tell all of his friends never to step foot in this establishment ever again, blah blah. But then my manager stands up for me like I've never been stood up for before. "Sir, another dirty word has been working here for years, and I've never once received a single complaint about her. In all honesty, she's the most experienced and probably the best server in this cafe. If you are having a problem with her, it's because you are the issue. Now, I've never seen you here once before, so I can say with certainty that you won't be missed should you choose never to come back. I'm not going to ask you to pay for your drinks, although I should considering how disrespectful you've been to my staff, but I am going to ask you to leave immediately. They left, and I immediately walked into the bathroom and cried, partially because I was just so shook up and angered by what the customer had said to all about me, but mostly because I was so grateful to have a manager willing to stick his neck out like that for me. Cheers to you, bossman. Story 26. Not me, but a former assistant manager of mine was definitely not shy about calling out rude customers and shoplifters. My top 3 that I witnessed myself are 1. A customer, who was also one of those extreme couponers that was sorta irregular at our store, was always difficult and argumentative. Usually because she was always trying to get away with using multiple coupons that did not match anything she was buying. She also tried to get away with using expired coupons. So whenever a cashier would tell her she couldn't use the coupons, she would start getting verbally abusive. One day, I had the unfortunate luck of her at my register. And as expected, the same shit show began. I called for a manager, and once the assistant manager saw who it was, she flipped out on the customer. She had had it with that lady. She told the customer to leave the store that instant. The lady, of course, fights back. Verbally. My assistant manager was getting more and more pissed off. What really set her off is when the lady screamed at her to go herself and that she was a fat, ugly... My assistant manager immediately fires back by saying, "No, you go yourself. Every god time you come here, you always start your, I'm sick of it. We're all sick of it. Get thee out now, or I'll call the police." The lady thought she was bluffing for some stupid reason and encouraged her to do just that. And she did. The lady then left. 2. A group of teens that in the store are messing around with some toys in the toy aisle. My assistant manager was keeping an eye on them the whole time, making sure they weren't trying to steal anything. They weren't. Soon they grew bored and started walking to the front of the store to leave. However, one particular teen in the group made a mess of a few toys by not putting them back in their correct spots. So she approaches him, does that "come here" thing with her finger, and said, "You, follow me." She takes him back to the toy aisle and told him straighten up the mess he made. All the while, she's giving him a lecture about respect and how he was being very disrespectful by making a mess and then attempting to leave without cleaning it up. Meanwhile, his friends are all laughing at him. 3. There was man walking around the store eating a McDonald's hamburger with the wrapper still on, but opened and rolled down some so he wouldn't get his hands all greasy, and when he was done with hamburger, my assistant manager happened to spot the wrapper bunched up and tossed onto a random shelf. She left it there and went to speak to the customer. She asked if he enjoyed his burger. He said yes. Then she asked what he didn't with the wrapper. He said he had put it in his pant pocket. She asks that he show her the wrapper. Of course he couldn't produce it. So like with the teen, she tells him to follow her. He does, and she points to the wrapper he claimed was in his pocket. She tells him, quite sternly, to throw it away in a garbage can where it belongs. She keeps going, saying stuff like, "Is that what you do at home? Do you live in a pigsty? Do you not know what a trash can is and what its purpose is for? Why do you think it's okay to toss your trash wherever you want?"